Right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Coavera, formerly Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a little bit of a gloomy San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Julian Lighton, who is just up the road, actually, in Silicon Valley, up in the Bay Area. How are you doing, Julian?
Very well. Pleasure to be on your show.
Yes, and you are one of the most respected strategy practitioners and executive coaches, more than 30 years experience in hiring as a hiring manager, team leader, senior operating executive. You served as chief strategy officer at $4 billion public companies and as a board director and associate partner at McKinsey and Company. And one of the things you've done now is you've written a book, your new book, Navigating Your Next, which draws on hard-won experience to deliver a practical seven-step framework that helps professionals at every stage clarify what they truly want for their careers and build a clear, confident path to get there. One question, just one foundational question, Julian, right? In your experience, how many people actually have a career plan or think about a career plan, apart from kind of occasionally or in an abstract way?
So I think very few. I think
Mhm.
increasingly having a very fixed linear plan is not only not very possible, but also not something that people think about a great deal. So I think in careers, maybe the law or academia
Mhm.
or potentially in government service, there still is an ability to have a linear path and
Sure.
to think through progression.
Mhm.
But I think most people are like hitchhikers. They're standing by the side of the road and they know roughly maybe what direction they want to head in, but they have no idea whether a bus is going to come along or whether they're going to walk or whether they're going to cycle.
Mhm.
And so they're pretty opportunistic.
Yeah, and absolutely, and the timing of your book, because it seems really relevant. Not that it wouldn't be anyway, but it seems like now with AI, with all this talk about like work life changes, devastated industry, it's an interesting timing for your book because obviously this is probably because people are hearing all this stuff. It's probably focusing them in a way that they perhaps haven't been in the past.
Well, I think you've got a coalescence of different conditions.
Hmm.
So there's more volatility and more uncertainty and more complexity. And so, given that, uh, you got to really figure out what you want.
Hmm.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to get buffeted by vast impersonal forces that are going to make you much more reactive than proactive, and that's going to drive a series of unfortunate events. So my general message to people is: look, you're going to spend roughly 90,000 hours in your career.
Hmm.
That's a third of your life, and therefore you better be proactive in actually trying to figure out not only what you want but how to get it. And a lot of that is about skill and competence and practice, rather than just being lucky.
Mm.
Okay, so how, therefore, are you going to prosecute this over time? How do you get better at those life skills? And in particular, life is going to change as you move along.
Mhm.
So, what works for you in your late 20s will not work for you in your mid 30s, will not work for you in your mid 40s, will not work for you in your mid 50s. And so, you're going to go through transitions, and you better manage those transitions well because they're pretty unavoidable.
Mm. And it's interesting you say about that, like transitions at different phases of your career, and they creep up on people sometimes, and they happen to them as opposed to them controlling the changes. And I think sometimes you don't even recognize that maybe your expectations and what you want maybe have evolved too.
Yeah, well, I think two things go on. I think one, what you want changes as an
Mhm.
individual. So you go from being, on your own in your 20s, right, carving your identity, having left your parents.
Mhm.
You're trying to figure out what you're good at and what you stand for. To in your mid 30s, you're really trying to figure out how do we get something done. So maybe you have a spouse or a partner, you might have kids, You might, be part of a larger family unit and you're trying to drive a business as an entrepreneur. And so you're going from I to we.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then in your 40s, it's kind of like, well, I've got, fairly far up the hill. Do I want to keep going up the hill or do I want to, do something else? So it's a passion and purpose thing. And then finally, 55 to 65, you're beginning to let go of work.
Mm.
For most people, particularly men, work is identity. And so you're trying to figure out what am I separate from what I've been doing for 30 years.
Mm. Yeah.
And at each one of those, you have an individual set of questions. What do I want? And then there's the broader, I'm in a system, typically a company. What do we want? And am
Mm.
I in alignment with that or not in alignment with that? And so you got to figure out what my options are and how I'm going to pursue them. And as you pointed out, what am I going to do proactively?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, because otherwise it's just gonna happen to you, isn't it? Tell me, can you walk through a little bit of the framework and, just walk me through the framework, and then
Sure.
maybe we can jump in on a couple of them?
Okay. So let's take as a background what we've been saying.
Mhm.
You've got four unavoidable transitions in life. You're going to spend a bunch of time on your career, at least a third of your life.
Mhm.
And so you, A, want to be proactive, and B, you are going to have to be forced to think about these things at various different times of your life. And so you better actually be skillful.
Right.
So what I did was I said, okay, let's take a look at what the most successful people do under those conditions. And I looked at my own career. I looked at those people I'd worked with. I did a bunch of research, both on people over time and people from different backgrounds. And then for the last 5 or 6 years, I've also done a lot of coaching, both of teams and individuals in relatively high performance organizations.
Mhm.
And so all of that combined, I said, okay, well, what do these people do that leads them to be successful? And so, unlike a Daniel Pink or a Simon Sinek
Sure.
or a few others, I'm not trying to tell people to be successful in this particular way,
Yeah.
right? Don't, Simon has this thing about going and being a Marine leader.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I'm trying to do is say, you can be whatever you want, but these seem to be 7 rational steps that you are going to have to go through no matter what you want, yeah, in order to be successful. So, number
Mhm.
one is don't do it on your own. Okay, sounds incredibly obvious, but incredibly true. So we all have reference groups surrounding us that roughly form our identity. Typically, our parents, maybe siblings, maybe
Mhm.
some aunts, uncles, etc., and then a couple of friends and a couple of work colleagues. So recognize who that group is and get them to come on the journey with you. So if you're going to
Right.
go from where you are today, which I'm assuming that's not entirely what you want,
Mhm.
yeah, to something different, then you're going to go on a journey, bring people with you. That's the group you want to bring, and you want to tell them about it so they can help you with resources, time, feedback, support, you name it. Okay.
Right.
Step number one. Step number two, if you're going to go hitchhiking, where are you on the map today? Right? Sounds obvious again, but it's amazing how few people actually really do this of sitting and thinking about, okay, what do I look like to
Mm.
myself and to other people?
Right.
And that is really 4 factors. One is competence. What are you good at? Number two, in what context? So, location, size of company, complexity of team.
Mhm.
You have a certain set of competencies that work and that you're good at, and you work in a certain competence, in a certain context, rather. Third axis is culture. We are all tribal. You
Mhm.
work in certain types of culture and not in others.
Yeah.
So, what are your values? What are you looking for? So that you can tell other people, and also you can use it as a filter to be able to say no to a bunch of things.
Mhm.
And finally, mindset. What's your motivation? What are your aspirations? So, how high do you want to go? Do you want to play in the Olympics or do you
Mhm.
want to play in the local soccer league? Right? No one's judging you. No, it's neither good nor bad. You just need to know what you're trying to do. Right? So,
Right.
motivation, aspiration. Thirdly, limiting beliefs and biases.
Mhm.
What's keeping you where you are? And lastly, decision-making process. How do you look at the world? Human beings have two decision-making frameworks. One is called the default mode network, based on patterns. We all wander through life
Mhm.
and figure out what we're going to do based upon what we've seen before. And the second one is when that doesn't make sense. So we suffer cognitive dissonance. It gets kicked out, and we try and figure out based upon logic or on emotion, and we use our own decision making process. Okay.
Right.
So if
Mhm.
that's what you are, then what do you want to be different about that? Step three.
Mhm.
Yeah. So now we've placed you on a map. Where do you want to go to? Well, again, I'm motivated. I have aspirations. I want this, this, this,
Mhm.
this. So I want to go from being this kind of person to this kind of person. Great. Okay. Now you can actually answer that question. You can empower yourself by going and telling other people that. Because it turns out, interestingly, you can't get what you want unless you know what you want.
Right.
Most of the time, in order to get it, you need other people's help. So you have to be able to tell them. So you can't want five things.
Mhm.
That doesn't work, right? You got
Right.
to get it down to a small number of very rational things you can ask for help about. So,
And just and on that, Julian, we're so good at telling people, at identifying what we don't want. We're very bad at identifying what we do want. I mean, this is obviously something that people have to really focus in on.
and well, so you have both of these things at work at the same time, right? Human beings, as you say, are much better at saying no to things,
Mhm.
right? Strategy, which is really about decision making, is much more about what are you not going to do?
Mhm.
What are you actually going to do? So if you think about yourself, right, as a company and what you're running, and you're going to, come up with your own strategy for where you want to go, then you have to say no to a lot of other things, and that makes it much easier to
Mhm.
figure out what are the one or two or three things that actually are going to work for you and that you really are going to focus on.
Mhm.
Okay, so in that process of saying no to things, you actually end up saying yes to a much smaller number of things, and that gives you focus. And focus
Yeah.
is a key element.
Mhm.
Okay, so third step is understanding what you want
Yep.
from where you started. Yeah. Step four is value proposition.
Mm.
So there, we haven't really changed very much as humans in 40,000 years, and we are all used to telling each other stories.
Mhm.
Okay. And so what you want to be able to do is tell your story. I'm going from here to here. Yeah. So this is who I am. This is
Yeah.
what I want. This is why me.
Mhm.
Why am I uniquely suited in this? Why am I the hero?
Yeah.
My own story, right? So,
Mhm.
Nolan's Odyssey is going to come out in a few weeks. This is as old as Homer.
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to tell our own story.
I hate to say I'm old enough to have done Latin in school and actually
Yeah, me
read a
too.
lot of the
Me too. And so, the fundamental thing that we don't think about ourselves is we're in relationship with all of these people around us.
Mhm.
And to get them to do things for us, we have to tell them a story.
Yep.
Since we're the hero of our own story, what is that value proposition? What is that hero about? Okay, so that's step four.
Mhm.
That then leads to step five. How do you go about using a network of people, all the people you know, all the people you know? So first and second nodes in
Mhm.
your network, that gets you access, right? So really, as human beings, what we're trying to do is get in the room with the person who's going to make a decision.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Three different doors. You can go through the front door. That's very hard, right? Long lines on
Mhm.
that door. You can number two, you can go through the back door, and I suspect you and I have done that a lot in our careers. We have snuck up to the kitchens and shuffled our way through in order to get into the bar or
Yeah, yeah.
pub or whatever it is. Okay, and then there's what they call the third door. The third door is basically where you really, use the power of blagging
Mhm.
in order to be able to tell your story to get in to see someone.
Right.
So, I'm an author. I want to get to see Oprah. So I call up her agents
Mhm.
and I blag them a great story. and I get to go down to Santa Barbara and I get to see Oprah. And
Hmm.
Oprah says, "We want you in the Book of the Month Club," and your thing becomes self-fulfilling. But you have
Yeah.
to have self-belief. You have to have that story to be able to open those doors. Okay? So,
Exactly.
right? Step 5.
And one thing there, Julian, just a good thing you touched on there is you have to be your cheerleader, right? You have to be the one who cheers loudest.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the run up to this conversation, one of the things that I try and remind everybody is no one is coming to the rescue,
Yeah.
right? You are utterly alone. You are completely responsible for your own outcomes, right?
Hmm.
There are no victims here. And so you have to decide what it is you're willing to do in order to be able to get what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, another marker of people that are very successful is that they make a commitment, they make a bond with themselves,
Right.
right? They say, I'm responsible and I'm going to be disciplined.
Hmm.
If you think about the Nike "Just Do It"
Yeah.
commercial, that's what that is an athlete. There's no motivation in the world that gets you up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go running in the wind and the rain and the snow. There
Hmm.
is discipline,
Yeah. Yeah.
there is dedication. And so "Just Do It" is about that, is
Yeah.
about the commitment to yourself
Yeah.
that you are going to learn and develop and get
Mhm.
better and pursue what you want, right? And so
Mhm.
that really, you've got to know what you want. You have to be able to be focused. You have to make that commitment and you have to have discipline. And that gets you your process, not just on your own, but by enlisting other people. So,
Yeah.
how do you go through and enliven, innovate the network around you so that they are motivated to get you what you want?
Mhm.
Okay, which takes us to step 6. Beware what you want, because you might well get it,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure this is true for you as it is for me and many, many other people, who've been successful in their lives. Success costs,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
you have to say no to things.
Mhm.
You have to say
And
no to
and it and
something.
it's true, and I think that's the thing is I think sometimes people don't realize that, that success, however you define success, though it does come with a set of compromises just like everything else in life.
Yeah, so, one, if you say yes to something, you have to say no to other things.
Yeah.
That could be health, that could be family, it could be friends,
Mhm.
could be colleagues, could be other things that you want to do, other versions of you, right? Then be careful what you want. This is a very common mistake amongst the very successful, because if you get it, the problem is was it worth it? And I spent years talking to people. There is no amount of cars or houses or holidays or
Mm.
beautiful Russian girlfriends or whatever it is you want, right, that will actually make you happy at the end of it.
Mhm.
Really, what makes you happy is the journey.
Yeah.
It's the people that come on the journey with you. It's what you're doing, your lived experience day to day to day. Because at the end, right, when you're 60, 70, 80 years old, you can't take any of this stuff with you.
No, no, you
Right?
can't.
It's your memories, it's your experiences, it's the lived life that ends up being the most meaningful measure of success.
Yeah,
So,
and I think, Julian, that just on that point is I think we lose sight of the journey so often because we're so fixated on the destination, and and a lot of those destinations we rarely ever actually get to that
yes,
particular destination because the journey itself, other things unfold on the journey. But yeah, I feel like sometimes we don't appreciate the journey we're on enough.
well, not only that, but we don't celebrate it with others.
Yeah.
I mean, just stop and smell the roses, right? Life is short enough. Enjoy it and
Hmm.
share it with other people, because those things are the things you're going to remember. Yeah. You were talking just for, a minute ago. One of the most common things that I found, I've been to a lot of different reunions, celebrations of different organizations, different universities, etc.
Hmm.
One of the most common things is people show up and they talk about what they're going to do when they have time,
Right.
or when they have the right assets or the right
Mhm.
resources or the right blah 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 blah, and it never happens. Yeah, they're just putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Now is the only time.
Mm.
that you've got. So if you really want to do it, you have to make the painful reallocation of priorities to doing the things that you're actually really caring about and saying no to the other things.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then I think there was number 7, did we
Yeah, number 7 is simple. We all have to start, right? There's a simple metaphor, which is I used to live, as I'm sure we all did at some point, in kind of student houses.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah.
my room was at the back of the house. And every morning I would walk through the kitchen and the washing up, right, would sit there.
Sure, of course.
And I would look at it and think about how am I going to do the washing up, or how are we going to do the washing up? Am I going to take all the plates out? Am I going to do the cutlery first? Am I going to do the glasses? Blah, 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 blah. And every night I would come back and I'd walk through and see it rotting away
Yeah,
until eventually you just do it. And then it doesn't matter, right, how you start. All that matters is that you start.
yeah.
Now, that starting is such a common human experience that I wrote chapter 7 about, look, if this book is about how do you know what you want and how do you get it, 90% of the time you're going to have to lead other people,
Mhm.
okay? If in getting what you want.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? How do you start? Right? How do you solve that washing up problem with other people? And there's
Mm.
a metaphor, it turns out, used in organizational design and psychology called the woolly mammoth problem.
Right.
Right? Again, we haven't changed very much in 40,000
Mhm.
years, and this is the essence. So imagine you're in a cave in Northern Europe. It's getting cold outside. Winter is coming. And your family and yourself are hungry, and there are a bunch of other people in the cave. They're hungry too. And so, what are you going to do about it? Right? Can't sit there, right? You can't draw it. You can't
Yeah.
talk about it. You
There's no
can't,
there's no DoorDash.
there's no DoorDash, right? So you have to do something.
Mhm.
But crucially, going and killing a rabbit or a deer isn't going to be enough.
Right.
So you can't solve it on your own.
Mhm.
So this is what they call the woolly mammoth problem. You're going to have to kill something big,
Yeah.
and you can't do that on your own. So you have to do it together. So it goes from I to we.
Right.
Right? The fundamental human endeavor problem of how do we do something.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the last chapter is setting the second book up on leadership, which is okay. So if you've now figured out that you are on this arc of 90,000 hours and that you know what you want and that you figured out what your value proposition is and you figured out kind of how to innovate the network to go and get it, the thing is you're going to show up on day one and you're going to have to tell a bunch of other
Yeah,
people
yeah.
that you want to do this thing, and you're going to have to get them to say yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that's really, I think that's a really profound point for people to take away because I think we naturally think a journey like this is a solo journey, right? And you have the way you've laid it out at every point here. No, it's not a solo journey at all. In fact, the more you engage with people and the more you find the right people, and the more you embrace the journey, the more that will be returned to you. It's so
Yes.
if you do it on your own, you're probably going to get stuck.
Yeah. Not only are you going to get stuck, and you're going to have a much lower chance of success,
Mhm.
you're not going to be very happy,
Right, right.
right? If the journey is
Mhm.
the thing, ironically, and you try and do that alone, even if you do it, at the end of the day, who are you going to share that with?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, it's kind of like thinking about like if you go on a solo trip somewhere and you just say, "Okay, I'm not going to interact with anybody. I'm not going to speak to anybody. I'm just going to go from place to place to place, and
Yeah.
then I'm going to come back." Wouldn't be a very satisfying trip, would it?
I mean, it's a way of doing things,
Yeah.
but is it going to be the best way? Right?
Mhm.
A life well lived, right? If you talk to the people who are most successful in life, they will tell you that there are really three basic elements. So, number one is you're going to need some kind of balance,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Monomaniacally pursuing a goal rarely is satisfying, as we've discussed, because you're
Mhm.
going to miss friends and family, you're going to miss hobbies and health and travel and everything else in search of this one thing. So, you're going to want some kind of balance because it's a life.
Yeah.
right? Number two, you better understand what success looks like for you.
Yes.
And most people, success for them is achievement of something with others.
Hmm.
When we talk about passion and purpose, right, it's rarely, if ever, on our own. You see all of these athletes collapse in tears, embracing their parents or their coaches,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Why? They just did something on their own. Well, no,
Mhm.
they didn't.
Didn't.
They did something as a team. So it's who's on the journey with you,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And the third thing is you really, 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 really have to enjoy how you're spending that time.
Hmm.
So, as human beings, we are creatures of time and space, right? 4,000 weeks is our rough lifespan, and
Wow.
every week is 168 hours. So, if you take out sleep and you take out eating, yeah, what's left is what you're spending on whatever your career is and the time left over for relationships, hobbies,
Right.
etc. And so, your determination every week is how am I spending my allotment of time?
Yeah.
Right? So you better be happy with that lived experience. Don't put things off, right? People
Mhm.
who are happy live well.
Yeah.
Why do we look at the Italians and say, well, nobody ever regretted going to Italy, right? There's this meme
Yeah, yeah.
on social media,
Mhm.
right? The answer to virtually anything is just go to Italy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that? Right? Look at the way they live their life.
Mhm.
Right? Slower, the meaning of food, food shared with other people, enjoyment in simple things that actually are worthwhile,
Mhm.
being surrounded by beauty. This stuff is not for shits and giggles. This is
Yeah, yeah.
true. This is a universal truism. So if
Absolutely.
you can figure out right how to get a little bit of balance, how to go and do it with other people, and how to really focus on how you're living, how you're spending that time with those other people, you're going to be pretty happy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, listen, Julian, this has been absolutely fascinating. All of Julian's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Yeah, sure. So three things. Number one, book.
Mhm.
I just wrote my first book. It came out on April 28th. It's available on Amazon and at all good bookstores. It's doing very well, number one in four categories.
Nice.
Please take a look. You can get it on Kindle or in hardback. Softback audio are coming later in the summer. Number two, you can go to my website, www.julianlighton, all one word.com,
Mhm.
and you will find a bunch of events. I'm going to be doing webinars, masterclasses on the stuff that we've just been talking about, John and I. So, how do you know what you want? How do you know what your value proposition is? How do you go about getting it? How do you know
Mhm.
what success looks like? They're going to be set up over the next 2 or 3 months. Please come along, join in, and let us know what you think about all this stuff and what your particular takes are.
Fantastic.
Number three, uh, if you are an entrepreneur or a leader, and some of what we've talked about makes you curious to take it further, you can contact me again at the website, and I'm available to help as a business coach, either with teams or with individuals.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Julian, congratulations on the book. I would encourage people to go check it out. You've had a brief overview of it. It sounds like it's a fantastic resource, and you just don't want to let life happen to you. So go check it out. So thank you again, Julian. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.